Sure.
Okay, the hour of 8 o'clock having arrived, let's kick this off. Patty Gartland, welcome. We'll kind of do a roundhouse roll call here in a minute. But, Mr. Chair, yeah, or you can, wherever.
All right, welcome everyone. While I walk over here,
You got my agenda now, so that's okay.
yeah. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Very good. Greg Westminster,
Yep.
Swenson, motion and second. Looks like we've got approval.
Make.
What was I going to say here? Oh, let's go around the table. Just quick introductions. Let's start over here, guys.
Jason Freeler with Schnettler Custom Builders.
Jason Freeler, Schnettler, good.
Dan Stein, Schnettler Custom Builders.
Stein, Schnettler.
Pete Kleber, Excel Energy.
Stuart Swenson, Suncom Real Estate. Greg Wensman Contractors.
Wanda Schroeder, CMBA.
Bernie Perriman, Batteries Plus Bulbs.
Excellent. How about on the Zoom? I keep wanting to say phone. It's not. Got Mark Foster from Housing First Minnesota.
Yep, that's good morning.
Will Houston, I see you are on. Sarah Coker is on from Times, which is great. Glad to see the attention from the Times. We need local coverage of building issues.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Dan Schroers from Mechanical Energy Systems is on. Patty Gartland from the GSDC is on. Patty, how are you doing?
Good.
Very good, Jens. It's a hot day. Okay. It's a really nice tone on your phone there, Peter.
Good reminder.
Please mute your phones. Mark Foster is our good colleague from Housing First Minnesota. He helps us keep track of state and to a certain extent national as it comes down to state. Mark, you're going to hear a lot from Mark and I this morning. We're going to cover a lot of stuff. There is a lot happening on the state regulatory front. Before we get to that, which is kind of the meat of the agenda, I want to do a quick federal update, kind of the latest from DC. In terms of legislation in DC, not a lot happening in the housing space right now, which is kind of unfortunate because housing affordability is a huge issue. It's a huge issue here. It's a huge issue nationally. There was a bill called something Mark, you can help me with the name of it, in Washington, DC, but it's not really going anywhere or doing anything. I have not seen any updates on it in the last month, and mortgage interest rates, of course, are bad, but we'll get to that in a minute. There's a lot of talk now about a potential housing market crash, and they're talking about it being like what we saw in 2008. Most of the experts don't think it will be like 2008. They do expect a correction in the housing market. I think we're expecting that to happen. The difference being the housing market implosion of 2008 is what caused the recession. This time around, we're in a recession caused by many other things, including the pandemic and war in Ukraine, federal policies. And housing is kind of part of that. So it's not expected to be as big of a crash, but we are kind of biting our fingernails about that. You got soaring home prices, mortgage interest rates. I think we're approaching 6% now on a 30-year fixed rate, which is pretty tough. But, in historical context, what were they back in the 70s? 11, 12, 13, almost twice what we've got here. So, the water's not that bad. Come on in. You can always refinance. I've got a son of mine who saved up a down payment. I said, as things ease off a little bit here, and we don't have, 5 people bidding on a house before it even goes on the market. Once that calms down a bit, take that down payment, go on the market, find a good house, and if you need to refinance, you can do that at some point. So again, we have soaring home prices. Obviously, that's cooled off a little bit. Elevated mortgage rates we talked about. High inflation is having a significant impact on people's pocketbooks and on their ability to buy houses. And frankly, from a renter's perspective, if you're doing multifamily housing, rents are sky high right now. It's getting really tough. So they're claiming that if we wanted to see something as deep as 2008, we need to see a wave of people selling off their homes. We don't see that yet. That's not happening. Housing shortages continue. There's plenty of demand for houses, right, gentlemen? We're not seeing any end to it. Labor is an issue. Supply chain is an issue. Cost of materials is an issue. Housing shortages and affordability, as I mentioned, still a big issue, but not a lot being done in DC. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. Nope, I'm not wrong. Okay, good. I mentioned nearly 6% interest rates on 30-year fixed rate. The Federal Reserve's rapid, you could call it rapid interest rate hikes are taking a serious toll on the housing market. Home prices and sales have fallen as buyers recoil from rising mortgage interest rates. One of the first sectors of the economy impacted by federal rate hikes. Somebody's calling me from Pine City. Who would that be? Don't know.
Want to know if you sell your house?
Be great. You know what? Somebody asked me if I was going to sell my house. I said, everybody's got a price, right? Just throw me a number, you know? Okay, so rising housing costs are fueling inflation, which is at what? 9.1%. We thought 8.6 was a blip, but it isn't. Inflation is strong and continuing, and it's a real millstone around the neck of the economy. Highest in over 40 years. Lumber prices, good news, right? They have dropped from their May 2021 high. I still can't believe this. It was 1,607 per thousand board feet. In March, it was still at 1,460 per thousand. It is now down to 650 per thousand, which is pretty good. There's been a little bit of a spike lately, but nothing like we were seeing. So lumber prices have come back. On the bad side, the bad news side, we still have materials cost increases. We still have a hard time supplying some things. But the good news is the shipping container situation, especially from overseas, is improving. You now have, for example, from China, I think the demand for shipping container space now meets the capacity for the first time in a couple of years. So things are getting better there, but they've got a long way to go to get back to where we need them and where they should be. Mark, anything else you would share on the federal front?
Not really federally, Steve, no.
Yes, Greg.
Steve, I do have a comment. You talked about softwood lumber pricing. Thank you.
Yes.
And is St. Cloud Times still on? Something I'd like to make a comment about is, for whatever reason, I don't know, the media really seems to dwell on softwood lumber pricing and how it's affecting the housing prices. I have had 2 customers within the last 2 weeks that were shocked to see numbers of their projects still going up, you know, within the last 2 months. And so I had to explain to the customers, well, your softwood, your dimensional lumber, and your sheathing is really only about 50% of the cost of your project. Your windows, your siding, your roofing, millwork is a big one, are still on the uphill climb, creating the overall cost of the project to go up. And I think the media could do us a real justice by talking about that. And
It's not just lumber. Yeah.
It's not just lumber in a project. And of course, labor and deliveries are up too. And for somebody that wanted to do an article on this, I think it would be really easy to find out pre-pandemic pricing on those products and what they've gone up to date.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's many lumber yards
yeah.
that have tracked it very close.
Yeah, we've seen materials cost increases 60, 70% and above for some things. I mean, incredible.
I mean, just a quick snippet, millwork is almost doubled in price since the start of pandemic.
And it hasn't come down much. I mean,
I haven't heard of anything in millwork. Shingles are still on the way up. Siding is still on the way up. And so they're all parts of the puzzle that affect the overall cost of the product. And it would be nice if media would get this out to our customers, to society.
and you mentioned labor. There are also regulatory impacts, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We're engaged in conversations with local officials about affordable housing. And affordable housing means a lot of different things, and I'm kind of doing this as a backgrounder for you, Sarah, but it means everything from, you know, housing for the homeless all the way up to how do we build houses people can afford to live in if we want the labor force we need for economic development, for example, for the businesses that Patty Garland's outfit, GSDC, are trying to bring to town. It's a huge factor in affordability. And so regulations impact, what, about 30% of the cost of a house? That's kind of the figure we work with, but about 30% of the cost of building a new home is regulatory burden. So can our local municipalities help us out with that? Materials costs, like Greg mentioned, are a big issue. Inflation, just core inflation is a big issue. And then we have labor costs because we can't find the workers we need to build houses. That's the bottom line. We don't have people in building trades. We will talk more about that. We met with the Department of Employment and Economic Development's new Deputy Commissioner for Workforce Development yesterday here in St. Cloud. It was an interesting meeting. I think he was wise politically to kind of, he didn't make a lot of promises, but we now have a direct connection. And we made it really clear to him at that meeting how important it is that we get more people in the building trades. Had an interesting conversation afterwards, and I'm kind of jumping ahead in the agenda, but talked with Jama. He's an elder with the Somali community here locally. And he said, Steve, we have to get in the classroom. We have to start marketing building trades to kids at a young age. And I said, Jama, you're absolutely right. But when we tell them, hey, you should get excited about an opportunity in the building trades, you're going to make $75,000 a year on average, plus benefits, great paying jobs that you can get to really quickly. Now they got to wait 2-3 years before they can even do it because we can't allow 16 to 17-year-olds on job sites. And he stopped and he went, oh yeah. And we threw that issue in front of Mark Majors too. And it's a political thing. We'll talk a little bit about that, but we really need young people in the building trades desperately, and they're really good jobs. And we got to stop, telling our kids that they're going to be doctors and lawyers and such, because a lot of them will have great careers in the building trades. Okay, so I took care of that agenda item before we even get to it. Let's pivot to Mark and the state. By the way, Housing First Minnesota has been doing an exceptional job of keeping us heads up. We are involved in energy code, electrical code. The ICC is starting the process. It starts way up at the top of the hill, rolls downhill through Washington, comes to the state of Minnesota. So the new building codes are coming down in their 3-year process. I mentioned electrical, energy, plumbing, and then we also have stormwater regulations that are being updated. So there's a lot of regulatory stuff going on this summer. And Housing First has been great in keeping us informed, helping us, we've had letters go into the boards of electricity and energy and things so that we're on the point, and we're going to seek your input as well as we go through this. Mark, I'm kind of stealing your thunder, but why don't we start with the residential energy code, because that's kind of a hot topic.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me this morning, Steve, and good morning, everyone. Nick Erickson, he's been on your calls before. He sent me kind of a rundown of regulatory items that are impacting our whole industry right now. And at the top of that list is the electrical code. It's nearing completion. We're looking kind of end of August or early September timeframe. The electrical board will begin reviewing the code changes, and both us at Housing First and then you guys at CMBA are partnering together on an industry response. 2 weeks ago, we sent a memo to the Board of Electricity seeking more industry input and engagement. They weren't overly thrilled about that, but nevertheless, that's what we were asking for. And so they're hoping to adopt the 2023 National Electric Code sometime around October, but the effective date's still undecided. Thank you all for, we sent out a survey to help understand this a little more. And I think many of your members answers that survey. So thank you very much for your assistance there. On the plumbing side, there's a meeting this morning. That's actually where Nick's at. To discuss a plumbing, when a plumbing license is required to install an appliance in residential settings. They're trying to have a conversation about requiring a plumbing license for setups of dishwashers and refrigerators and the like. And we're seeking some clarification there, because we all know you necessarily don't need a full plumbing license to plug in a dishwasher or a refrigerator.
There's a water treatment bypass issue too, isn't there, Mark?
I don't know enough on that to speak to it. So I can have Nick follow up on,
For sure.
on
Yeah.
that though. let's see, also on the stormwater front, let's see, on Wednesday, us and you guys will be meeting with MPCA over the new construction stormwater permit. It's going to be issued about a year from now, and we're hoping to see a public draft later this year. And anything else you have with that one, Steve? I don't have any other information on that.
Just a local note that Matt Glazeman with the city of St. Cloud has asked to meet with us, and we'd like to meet with him too. The Planning Commission in the city of St. Cloud is going to be taking up some stormwater rule changes. I don't think they're related to this because this is on a longer burn, but they may be. And we know other municipalities are looking at this too. So we will be visiting with him. I think he's looking for some input from our members. So we will act as a conduit for that. And for all of these things, by the way, we will try to get our members, CMBA members, a digest of what's being proposed, what the changes are, and then, you know, act as a conduit for your input. If you don't like something that's being proposed, some of it will be self-evident. And Housing First has been great at being at the table and arguing against these things. We've opposed adoption of the energy code successfully last time around. We think we're going to do the same thing this time around because it adds significant costs. With, you know, it's a big political issue right now, climate change and green stuff. And some of that can be helpful, but too much of it can be really burdensome to what we already know is a difficult affordability situation. So
I would just add to that, Steve, on the energy code front, you know, last go around, they found the return on investment was about 28 to 30 years. You know, we're all for energy efficiency. We build the most energy efficient homes in the country already. And so, you know, we share that value in having energy efficiency. New home construction is a very, very efficient. It's my 1915 home that I live in that's not as energy efficient. But so it's a matter of, you know, return on investment and the like. If it was a 5-year payback on certain things, maybe we would be more interested in having some of those requirements. But we've already captured most of the low hanging fruit that would accomplish that. So
very good. Okay, so residential plumbing code meeting today. Board of Electricity met on July 12th, and so we'll be taking a look at the residential electrical code coming up. We've opposed some of those things in the past, and we'll continue to kind of play that role for the industry, is to say, look, you know, if it makes sense, if it increases safety, if it does it cost effectively, we're going to support that. If it doesn't, we're going to oppose it. And that voice, just for our CMBA members' purposes, your voice through us, through Housing First Minnesota to the state, is making a difference. We've held back a lot of crap over the years, and we're going to continue doing that again.
Yeah, Steve, the only other thing I'd add on the legal front is the Minnesota Supreme Court is reviewing a Burnsville park fee case. It's called PUCE, P-U-C-E versus Burnsville. If you'd like to look it up, the city won on appeal in February, but then the landowner down there in Burnsville was going to take it all the way to the Supreme Court. I'm not sure if we reviewed this in the past, but what they were looking to do was to change it. I believe it was change it from residential to a commercial. And the city originally was going to charge a $30,000 park fee. The landowner questioned, okay, where's this $30,000 going to go? Can you show me? They had no answer, no reply. So they said, well, okay, maybe we'll just reduce it down to an $11,000 park fee. And again, the question was asked, where is this money going to go? Because you have to have, in order to charge a park fee, you have to be able to show that, hey, this is going towards new parks. And again, they could not answer it. And actually, I think the city attorney's on record saying as much. So we have joined as an amicus party on that because it does have, it does impact our world, even though it was industrial, commercial. I can't remember, it was one or the other. But it impacts our world. Obviously, we all pay park fees, and happy to pay some of that. But when you don't have a plan for an actual park, it's just going to a slush fund. So again, anything that goes through the courts is a slow boil, often takes many years, but this is industry impacting.
This could be a very big deal. I mean, there's a lot of communities that right now charge fees for parks and some other things where it just kind of goes into a general development fund or an engineering fund or whatever. And if the Supreme Court rules in favor of the plaintiff, that's got to stop. They actually have to designate, look, if they're going to charge, you own 200 acres that you want to develop eventually for residential, for example, and they're going to charge you a park dedication fee. They have to show the park they're going to build. They have to talk about, this is the park we're going to build. This is what it's going to cost. This is why we're charging you that fee. That's a whole different ballgame. And could be very good for our industry, or if the Supreme Court rules the other way, it kind of goes back to where it is, where in a lot of cases, not every case, but there are a lot of municipalities out there that really do. They charge a standard fee. It may be based on acreage or whatever, but it goes into, as you pointed out, Mark, a slush fund, which is another way of increasing costs without really increasing accountability. Any questions? First of all, let's open it up to members quick. We've covered a lot of stuff here. Any questions at all? Areas that are of particular concern to you?
I have a couple new items.
Sure.
At that point.
Okay, we do have an item at the end for new stuff. Let's hold off till then. The next piece we wanted to talk about are, well, other state updates. Mark, let's talk just briefly about the election situation. So what's happening this fall in terms of elections will have a dramatic impact on our industry, bottom line. We're
For sure.
a regulated industry, and so we're watching what's coming down from the federal elections as well as the state elections with great interest.
Yeah, no, it's a big election year, as I'm sure we're all aware, with all constitutional offices on the ballot, all 201 legislative seats on the ballot under new maps. Bernie's well aware of those new maps and what it's like running for office, but there's a lot of good conversations happening, a lot of good people running for office. I'd say personally, I've sat with probably 3-4 dozen of the new folks that are running for office, just to share, who we are, housing issues, and to get to know a little bit more about their campaigns as well. But we're approaching primary here in a few weeks. There's not a whole lot top of ticket that's as interesting as 4 years ago. Remember Governor Walz and at the time she was Representative Erin Murphy were running in a primary for who would take the DFL nod for governor. And then also you had Tim Pawlenty and Jeff Johnson running on the GOP side. So it was a far more interesting primary. This the one we have coming up here on August, I think it's 9th or 10th, is far less interesting. There is only one competitive statewide seat, and that's on the Republican side for Attorney General. You have Doug Wardlow, who ran last time and lost to Keith Ellison, running against the endorsed candidate, Jim Schultz. So those two are duking it out to see who gets to run against Keith Ellison. But then, there's some local primaries as well that will have legislative impacts. There's quite a few incumbents on both sides of the aisle that were paired in the most recent maps. So you have a lot of those folks having to run against each other. So those are some interesting dynamics as well. You kind of have caucus mates running against each other. So we're watching all that, from the Housing First perspective. We're deep in the process of our endorsements. We're hoping to have those out here in the next couple weeks. And there's a statewide flavor to all of that. So we're excited about that. And like I said, we've had some good conversations. Yesterday, our board of directors sat with Dr. Jensen and talked housing issues and learned more about his campaign. And then we're hoping to have the same conversation with Governor Walz here in the next couple of weeks as well. So a lot occurring on the electoral front, and it's not going to slow down anytime. We'll steam all the way through November. And I just always have to give kudos to your guys' delegation up that way in St. Cloud. Lots lots of good folks and running for office and already in office. So.
Well, I'm directly involved in the building trades. I mean, Senator Howe is a housing inspector. Of course, Tama Tice has been involved in she was chair of the board for CMBA for a while. She and her husband Greg running a construction business. Shane Mecklin involved in the industry as well. So we've had really good support from our local delegation. We hope that continues. We see a red wave coming that doesn't seem to be changing much at the federal or state level. We've had friends on both sides of the aisle, obviously, but we think the way things are shaping up right now, we may end up with a much better mix for our industry in particular. People who understand and support all the issues that we're talking about this morning, who get the housing affordability issue, the need to help residential home builders do the job that they do, the need for labor in our industry. And we think all that'll be helped if things come to pass the way they seem to be shaping up for this fall's elections. All right, I mentioned local engagement briefly. I wanted to talk about, we're connecting with, Patty, go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Steve. I just wanted to, if it's not too late, offer a comment on the park dedication fees, if I could. And I'm going to draw from my 27 years on the municipal side of development activity. Absolutely, there should have to be a dedicated fund where any park dedication fees are held in that fund and are usable only for park improvements. The one comment I would share is if legislation comes forward or some kind of conclusion that says you have to have a site specific identified in order to justify the park dedication fee, you are going to immediately inflate the cost of that piece of property, because that property owner now knows government has, intentions of acquiring. And so it would, my word of caution would just be to not push the pendulum, too far the other direction and create a scenario where you now have pinpointed a piece of property, and for sure the community should have a plan for and perhaps identify within a general service area where they, will be looking to create a new park or to expand an existing park. But just the trigger for me was identifying a specific site. And
yeah, Mark, I may have said that wrong. I don't know that they're talking about you have to have site specific, but I think you do have to have plans for an actual park.
Yeah. So in this specific case, the city had no plan for new parks and no evidence as well that this development would cause a need for a new park. Because as a home was already on the property, and probably, I'm not sure for sure on this, but there was probably a park fee paid when this home was installed. I would be sure many years ago. I just say on the park fee front, like I said earlier in my comments, we share park values. Obviously, all of us as builders, we sell parks. Consumers want to have parks, want to have bike trails, want to have most of that stuff. It's just a matter of, in some communities, not all, far from it, but in some communities we see a charge in a PUD where you're paying for the parks through a park fee. You're also installing the parks, and then sometimes putting in bike trails. And so you get double or triple dipped. And, I'll give you an egregious example. Was in the Prince land down in Chanhassen, Chaska area. Approximately 50% of that land was dedicated to parks. So all of a sudden, when you have 50% of that land, that's gone, those houses go way through the roof. And that's just for parks, yet alone all the infrastructure needed for that development. So we absolutely share that value. It's just a matter of finding that right balance. I think. And, you know, some of that was based off of prior court decisions that 10% is a reasonable allocation. And so basically every city we see goes all the way up to that 10%. And then some try for even more and say, take us to court if you really want to challenge it. So that's our frustration, I would say.
Well, good point though, Patty, and we appreciate that. By the way, just as a heads up, if you're going to be around long enough, when we get to kind of right before member input here at the bottom of the agenda, I'd love to give you a chance just to talk a little bit about what GSDC is up to. And I know we've talked more about collaborating on the whole workforce front too, which is exciting and very important to our industry, obviously. I mentioned that we are meeting with Matt Glazman about stormwater. I suspect we'll have that conversation with a couple more communities as things come forward on regulatory changes. We will be giving opportunities on all of these things, these regulatory things we talked about this morning. So watch for it, particularly on the CMBA website. We're going to give you opportunities to provide input. You can always email me. I mean, if you hear about something coming up, if you see something we post that you go, wait, hold on now, that's going to really rock my world. Let us know, because then we can write letters. We are involved in these meetings. Housing First Minnesota is setting up with regulatory officials. And certainly as the legislature gets back together, we can meet with our legislators and talk about those things. So it's really important if you see stuff, let us know what you think of it so we can be that conduit for you. I wanted to mention again, just briefly, Deputy Commissioner Mark Majors was in town yesterday. We met over at the St. Cloud Technical Community College, and it's Career Solutions. I want to say Career One because that's their program, but it's Career Solutions. Tammy Berry and her people, they are funded by DEED. They have a very close relationship with DEED. And so we'd originally reached out to Mark Majors when he was appointed, like the day after. And we're going to bring him in ourselves. And then, you know, Tammy kind of got a hold of him because on his list of to-dos was to get out to places like Career Solutions because they're a DEED entity. So anyway, ended up doing it over there. We did it in collaboration with the Chamber, with Career Solutions, ourselves. There were a number of other organizations. It was very good. And we had a chance to get the need for building trades in front of them. And at first I mentioned, you know, construction, you know, the average construction job, $75,000 a year plus benefits. It's a great thing to do. And he went off on DOT. And I had to kind of remind him, no, we're talking about building trades. We're talking about plumbers, framers, electricians, concrete workers, all of that stuff. And he said, yeah, we need those too. But it was, our effort is at a very beginning stage here, trying to build a relationship with Mr. Majors to say, look, the state needs to put more attention on building trades. And then we talked a little bit about the 16 to 17-year-old issue. Jama, I thought, was great in piping up to say, hey, we need to be in the classrooms. And then that kind of pivoting to, well, yeah, if we talk to the kids in the classroom, but we can't get them involved in the trades, you know, you're going to lose them by the time they're 18, 19, and that's what's happened. So that was a good conversation. It's one we want to work harder on. Great local opportunity that was really a result of CMBA and Career Solutions getting together. And the Greater St. Cloud Development Corporation was there as well. I couldn't name you all the groups that were in the room, but it was a pretty good coalition, and we'll be working on a lot of labor force needs locally. And part of it is just asking the state to get the heck out of the way. Can you get rid of the red tape? Can you make things simpler? You know, it's not that we don't want people unqualified doing, you know, dangerous work like over the road or whatever, but it also doesn't have to be hung with so much red tape and so much time and cost. So I think,
well, Steve, to that front, I was discussing this issue with some of our board members yesterday. One of them owns a lumber yard, and she is allowed to have to hire 16 and 17-year-olds on site. But when it comes to actually even doing the delivery of her product to a job site, they're not allowed to do that. So they can do stuff within the plant, but can't actually do the delivery because then you would be physically on site. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense sometimes to have those requirements.
Can I ask a question?
yeah, go ahead, Bernie.
I have a question because I want to understand this. What is their reasoning that they do? Is it just danger?
It's a lot of stuff. I think others will back me up on this. It is both practical, it is somewhat bureaucratic, and it is a lot political.
Related to child labor laws of your and abuse by.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it
people,
starts.
Yeah. I mean,
But a lot of it right now is, I mean,
federal labor laws are based on not being able to abuse child labor.
right.
And
Yeah, but beyond child labor, I think there's kind of a regulatory creep from bureaucrats, and I'm not calling them creeps, I'm saying there's kind of a creep to say, well, if this is safe, then if we add this, it'll be safer. And if we do this little thing, it'll be safer. And if we put this requirement on, it'll be safer. And it's kind of cover your butt from a regulatory perspective. Lawmakers fall into that a little bit in that, we passed a law that did this. Now, if we do this, we had an amendment that does this. Now we're even better. And I can pat myself on the back for doing that. So there's some of that. Part of the politics of it is, frankly, organized labor, the unions, want to do apprenticeships their way. And so they've created this term apprenticeship that nobody else can use. The industry's tried before. And Mark, you can do some backfill on this too. But it's kind of like, if you don't do it the union way, they're going to stand against it at the legislative level and at the administrative level. And the industry in the meantime is saying, look, regardless of whether it's union or non-union, we need 16 and 17-year-olds getting hands-on experience so we can start getting the thousands of building trades people we need into the profession so we can build the homes we need affordable. And that's kind of the yin and yang and tug of war that's going on right now at the legislative and the administrative level.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a spot on explanation, Steve. Yeah, very political. Obviously, very surprising that it gets political at the state capitol. But yeah, it is kind of ironic that you can have 16 and 17-year-olds on job sites as long as they're within the classroom setting. We have many high schools. I think some up your way that build. Yeah, it's fantastic on-site learning as a class, so we can do that type of learning. But then when it comes to the summer months where you all and my members want to do the basically the same thing, they're not allowed to. So it's a big bite. It's a big issue. I understand, and but many, I think almost all our neighbors allow 16 and 17-year-olds on site. So Minnesota, once again, we're the outlier that doesn't allow for it. So
Kevin Johnson from K. Johnson Construction has made the point too, and he's been kind of a champion for this from the chamber perspective. We allow kids as young as 10 years old to drive tractors. And is there any more dangerous job than working on a farm? I mean, really,
they're doing it for their parents. I mean, if you can have your kid work, you can work your own kid to the bone if you want, and the government can't do anything about it. So that's where agriculture comes in.
The argument about safety, though, I mean, kids work safely in agriculture at much younger ages. So the argument is, will they be less safe? Will they be in danger more if they're properly supervised? Now, Tammy Beery has a program where they run them through a whole safety course, OSHA safety course, and certify them. The problem there is the numbers are too small.
Steve, just a quick comment about the farm labor. From what I've been exposed to, the farm labor laws were designed when there was 40, 50, 60 horsepower tractors pulling trailers and utilities down the road or through the field. Well, as we all know, farming has changed a lot more corporate. I see it a lot locally, 200-300 horse tractors pulling multiple utilities. So, and I'm not dissing the ag industry. What I'm saying is their industry has changed and the same rules are still in place. Whereas in the opposite direction, the equipment in the building construction industry has also changed and it's become safer. We have a lot more tools and equipment and safety devices in place than what we had 20 years ago.
That's an excellent point. And my overall point is if they can work safely in the ag environment with all the dynamics you just mentioned, they should be able to work safely and even safer in the construction environment where we need them so desperately. And it's really bureaucracy and politics that are getting in the way. And that's the problem.
If other states can do it, Plus, let's look at Burger Kings and the restaurants and these fryers. They've got 15-year-olds doing it, so I don't get.
I did that as a kid.
I did that too.
Yeah, I
I
did
was a
too,
swing
and I
manager.
had many burns, but
Yeah.
my
Hey,
mom
one
said,
time
just
before
put salve on it and go back to work. Right. So I just, anything in Minnesota, I scratch my head anymore about it. Why?
Everybody's got their own lobbyists, the fast food industry has their own lobbyists, and the ag industry has their own lobbyists, and they're taking care of themselves. Obviously, they're doing a fine job. The construction
Yes,
industry,
yep.
those lobbyists evidently aren't able to find their niche.
Yeah, and I'll be real honest. I think that yin and yang with the labor unions is the big issue right now.
Well, sure.
It's a union versus non-union issue, and it shouldn't be, but it is.
Right, and there's not a fast food workers union that is as powerful as the construction unions are.
They're very big, especially when you get into the highway heavy. Steve, just another quick point about that. The part about the union, non-union that I find interesting is that if the residential world could hire 16 and 17-year-olds part-time, they could gain a lot of skills. And by the time they're 18, if we can't compensate them well enough, or if they don't like our industry, think of the experience they have when they go into the apprenticeship programs in the unions. We're basically kickstarting the unions. And
yeah,
I don't know if that's talked about.
It is, and part of what the unions, at least I've spent a couple of years trying to get into their head about this, and what I've heard is the unions know that if a kid gets into a union-based program, the chances of them becoming a union worker are dramatically higher than if they go through a non-union program at a young age. They tend to stay non-union. So this is really about the union trying to say, no, they must go through our path because then we know the chances of them staying union are stronger. And I get that. I mean, if I were a union person, that's,
we're all fighting over the limited pool of resources.
But the end result is we have fewer and fewer kids going into building trades, and that's not good for anybody, union or non-union. So, Mark, did I miss anything there? It's a really big issue for us, and it's good that we talked about the motivations because that when you see what's happening, that's what's underpinning it, and it's really tough. So lawmakers end up running into that too. They want to help, and then they realize, oh, the union thing is there, and they can only do so much, and so it's a challenge. It is a big challenge, but it's an important one, and it's one we're fighting for, and Housing First has been fighting for, and we'll keep trying to amplify that voice at the legislative and administrative level. Other questions or comments on that issue? I know this is a big issue. It may be CMBA's top, policy issue is this whole notion of we need to get more young people involved in the building trades or our industry. We can't build the houses that are needed. We can't build them affordably if we don't have enough people. Bottom line.
I'll just chime in and say that I think you're spot on in terms of, the politics that's at play and the role organized labor has had with it. We initiated, actually at the request of Representative O'Driscoll several years ago, the efforts to try to get those age restrictions lifted, and it was early in Representative Wolgamott's tenure as a legislator, and I think it caught him a bit off guard because he was totally supportive of the legislation to lift that restriction. The bill got jacketed, and then when it got presented to him to sign on to, the unions came at him full force and said, no way are you signing on to this. And I think it
really had the conversation with him, Patty, where I said, are you sure you can do this? Because I said, I think you're going to get pushback from the unions. And he said, I'm ready to do this. I'm going to do it with Senator Howe. He'll be the author in the Senate. I'm going to be the author in the House. We're going to get this. And I thought, boy, good for you. I don't know how you overcame the union objection, and sure enough, a week later, when he got the green jacket, dropped it on Tammy Tice's desk and said, I can't do this.
The inconsistency with him, on this issue that just is so striking to me is he's a youth football coach. There is nothing more hazardous to youth health and safety than probably playing football. So how is it that that's, that's okay, but our kids can't be on a supervised construction site? That's, yeah. Anyway, I offer that as a memory
Back that up.
jar.
And I got a kid who's playing junior college football next year, so.
Well, but they're similar in the fact that, you know what, if they have good coaches and trainers on the field and monitoring.
It
like
minimizes the
sport,
risk.
And it's the same with construction site.
Absolutely.
But you gotta put your, kind of your faith in, the system to take care of the kids.
And it goes back again, in my opinion, to government thinking they can solve all the problems instead of me as an employer. All my accidents are recorded. If my company becomes accident prone, slap my wrists.
Your insurance costs are gonna go up
My
too.
insurance costs are gonna go up. Again, they think they're so smart, they want to be out front solving all of the world problems. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
A couple of things from last month, the June employment data, the experts, the day before it came out, thought that June employment was going to be off the cliff down significantly, like 200,000 jobs. Well, the next day, the report comes out, 320 some thousand jobs in June, and they couldn't believe it. So, if they can't even predict what's going on in our economy the day before. And then the other item, probably the most unique from June, was that there was about 60,000 single-family purchase agreements scuttled in June across the country. Most of them because mortgage rates are up so high that banks are just
Took them out of their affordability.
banks are saying, no, you can't buy the house anymore. So that's a huge number. So if that keeps going, obviously houses are sitting there, they're not getting sold, so that's going to slow things down too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're watching that. There's not a lot we can do directly about that, but there's things we can do indirectly. We try to keep those voices going up the food chain. Mark, anything else to add?
Not that comes to top of mind, but yeah, legislatively, I guess, there's been more discussions around special session. I still feel like that's probably less than 10%, maybe even less than 5%, that we actually see any of that happen here. I think it's more likely that we just have the elections and they come back in January and try to figure out that rather large surplus, what to do with it with a new legislature and possibly the same governor, possibly a new governor. We would just like to thank all of you. Like I said, you've been very helpful on a number of regulatory, legislative, electoral fronts. So thank you all for being good partners with Housing First.
Yep. And likewise, you guys have been extremely helpful to us. So we'll continue that collaboration. Absolutely. I will say, gazing into the crystal ball, odds on, I think it's not going out on a limb too far to say Republicans are going to take control of the House and Congress. Senate is still a bit of a question mark, but leaning red. And obviously you'll still have President Biden. At the state level, I think you have a Republican Senate, Republican House, and House by quite a bit. I think it's going to be a very strong red wave. You are going to have a lot of new people. We just talked about that back when, but you might have 80 new people on the House side. And it's a lot of new people to educate. They're going to have to find out if Bernie wins election, you'll be new.
Mark's going to help me.
You'll be trying to figure out what committee assignments are, where the bathroom is, where your office is. And then on top of it, we're going to have to educate them about all these issues that are important to us in the industry. And they're going to have to get effective in how to work through the committee system and get things done. So it's a huge lift from an information and an industry perspective. We've got a lot of people to educate and get up to speed. They're going to be following the more experienced legislators, and we hope some of those will come back, some of our champions in housing. We mentioned some of the people here in our own local delegation we hope get reelected so that we have that momentum and understanding going into the new session and get some good things done. With that, I'm gonna ask Patty for a quick update from GSDC. We appreciate you having you on and partnering with you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve. Our board and some of our working committees are in the midst of our priority setting for 2023 to 2025. We just went through a strategic plan refresh, really reaffirming we need to stay the course that we're on with our highest focus on business retention expansion. Of course, that necessitates a lot of talent resourcing efforts, and you can't attract and retain the talent if you don't have great quality of life. So, it keeps us engaged in areas like expanding I-94 all the way to the St. Cloud area and beyond, the Highway 23, the broadband investment. The other thing that we're also just had completed was a minority business enterprise survey to better help us identify what are the needs of minority business interests to help those businesses grow and thrive. That's another part of our having an inclusive and fully engaged economy is to be able to help in that arena. So as our board has been going through our priority setting process, one of the things they will also be embarking on probably starting this fall is I have let them know my firm intent is to retire May 31st, 2023. So they will be, it's timely considering they are doing their strategic priority setting. I think that will help them better identify what's the skill set of the next leader of the GSDC that's going to serve the interests of the organization best. They will be hiring outsourcing a search firm to assist with that process. But in the meantime, I will be, full speed ahead, working with the organization. We appreciate our partnership. So much of what we do is done fully in collaboration with others. It's not a single pony game, as we all know. So really appreciate the partnership with the CMBA and others. And we just talked about the age restriction piece, but there's a lot of other topics along the way that we partner on also.
Well, we appreciate your years of service too, Patty. I first encountered you back in the city of St. Cloud when I was on the city council, which seems like decades ago. It is decades ago.
Yeah, well, I just hired an intern that interned for me when I was planning director from the city of St. Cloud. Tammy Campion actually just joined our team doing communication. She just got a short experience with retirement and decided that she's not quite ready for retirement. So that worked out really well for us. So she's now part of our team also.
Very good. Patty, thanks so much. We don't have a lot of time left, but I wanted to open it up too and see if there are issues that we're missing, things that are really rocking your world that we're not paying attention to.
I would like to bring up solar development. I was just informed that from Foley to St. Cloud, it's going to be nothing but solar panels, solar fields, either soon. Like some of the larger farmers in those areas they're going to take the solar deals. And I've been finding out that a lot of property owners in that area are not excited about it, and feeling that that's going to negatively impact their property values.
I don't see that Mark is on anymore, but we'll talk with them as well as we look at the state agenda. I mean, I got to believe other people are talking about that in terms of land use.
Yeah, this comes from Knife River executives that know a lot about all the land in that area.
Wow. What's driving that? Is it the subsidies that they get for doing solar farms or what?
It's the easy money.
Yeah.
And not worrying about hail storms or Farm insurance, crop insurance.
Doesn't hail damage solar panels too? I mean,
Yeah, but it
No,
does,
but
that
even
doesn't,
the farmers.
yeah, the farmers don't care. That
oh, they're just renting
I-
the space, yeah, yeah.
The rental, the rental
Yeah.
money from it.
Stuart tied too that I know, farmers that have solar on it. And if between the landowner and the solar developer, if they can work out a deal on very unfavorable land, the farmer no way can come close to turning profit per acre is what they're getting for solar. And so to them, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
The part that's a little bit personal to me is that without the government subsidies, the solars just don't work.
100%, and the cost of solar, you know, I mean, all these materials going up, steel, glass, I mean, all the solar panels, their costs have been skyrocketing as well. So, you know, it's, the numbers
Wow.
just, they don't work without the subsidies. You know, I mean,
No, they don't.
the
And
smartest, wealthiest men in the world are hoping to make an island in Hawaii, you know, solar, powered by like 2040.
we got a guy with XL Energy who chairs our committee here. What do you say, Pete? Yeah, Pete's gonna cover this.
but
I have my own opinions.
I'm assuming XL is heavily involved because of, if I remember correctly, because of the nuclear plant permit, you're required to invest money in load shedding and off peak, right?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure, and I know there was something with the power plant vents and I think directly tied to the nuclear deals, whatever, but I don't know that solar, I don't know. if that's-
Maybe we should have Mark
Yeah, I'm-
Ossendorf in next month to talk about it.
I just want to go on record, I am in nowhere near anti-green energy. But the part that I have a problem with is those federal subsidies, it doesn't work. And tied to a previous conversation we had at this meeting, I'm sure we are competing for employees because I have found in the wind energy, very lucrative business to be in. I mean, he paid off his college tuition in about 18 months with it.
Wow.
Very lucrative, very well paid.
Look at Blattner Energy.
Oh, yeah.
They just sold.
The multi-billion-dollar
Huge
company, that's all they
industry.
do. You know, and
Which is,
Solar plant.
yeah.
But,
It is heavily subsidized and politically, I mean, the winds, not to, no pun intended, but the winds are definitely going in that direction.
And if I can just circle back with another item, I just wanted to back to employees availability and hiring. While some of the people are still present here, this season, Winston Contractors has hired 7 employees. I currently have 2 left. I've never had more than 3 at a time. My target is 2 crews of 2, so 4 employees. I have even reached out to, I've got job postings in all of the 3 local Spanish grocery stores, trying to attract, I mean, we're searching, we're trying. Reason I don't have my complement of 4 that my target is, it's interesting, there seems to be a trend when I hire, I'll say the middle-aged group, they're not allowed to drive my equipment, my insurance won't allow them to be
Right.
insured because of the driving records. It's really unfortunate because some of them are quality employees. Some of them just do not work to simply lack of production. I mean, production is so minimal, there's no way I can afford to have them. And unfortunately, not sure why, the ability to learn and retain from one project to the next, which also ties to production. I am interviewing tonight again. I did a phone interview. I'm pretty hopeful I can hire the individual. So that'll mean 8 hires for the season.
Of which you only have 2 that have stayed.
I've currently only got 2, so this will be
Wow.
a complement of 3.
Wow.
This individual, I have heard through another source that was referred, the person was referred to come to me to work. Definitely not going to be able to drive my equipment. So it's just
Tough.
my single biggest limiting factor of producing and profitability is labor.
Yeah.
And which unfortunately, what I have to do is my priority has always been, when I get up in the morning, it's my current projects being built, and then it's my future jobs sold, and then it's filling my pipeline bidding. I have to spend so much time on my current projects, babysitting them. Sorry, that's not a very good word.
Yeah, well,
I'm not keeping my pipe full. I just filled out proposal yesterday. It had laid on my desk 8 weeks. I just simply didn't have time to sit down and focus on it. And there was one other item about that I was gonna talk about, whether 16, 17-year-olds, anyways, filling the labor force. Steve, if you don't mind, I'd like to circle back. I'm thinking this
Sure,
was
yeah.
like 18 or 24 months ago. There was a lot of talk about a statewide audit of the municipalities and their possible ability to generate money for the municipality through building permits. I don't know if that was ever circled back and closed on.
I can sure check on it.
It would be interesting because I mean, it's not a real hot topic or sore topic for me, but with all the storm damage that's happened in central Minnesota, these municipalities are buried in permits and inspections, so much that one of the local municipalities now, they no longer do progress inspections. We, the project managers, have to go out, we take progress photos and we submit them at the end of the project. Not a huge deal, but it just seems interesting to me that now.
So this is an audit of the turnaround time or the
No,
capacity or,
the sales of the building permits and what it's costing to manage their building department.
and that's important because I mean, under state law, permits, things like that, fees for this sort of stuff has to match up with the actual cost of delivery.
That's what I remembered it being, and I was curious because the municipality I'm talking about, they're selling over 2,000 permits a year. And that's why they can't come out and do the progress inspections. Where my point is, rather than ramping up on staff to do the inspections or contract, they just put the responsibility back on us, which means increased costs.
Right.
Well, they can't find staff either.
Probably.
It's like City Sartell just implemented their all online, inspection process, and it's kind of crazy. All of a sudden you get like 4 emails at once, and it was like electrical inspection done, plumbing, and boom, 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 they're all done, and never had to go to the property, as an owner, and I pulled the permit and never had to meet with any of the inspectors, and just got emails saying everything was good to go.
So it's working well. I've heard
Yeah,
good things about
it. Did on
it.
this
Yeah.
one, yeah, that's one. That was just a few months ago.
Yeah, that would be nice. I don't have that. I'm required to take my progress.
This is for commercial,
Yeah.
So you got, separate inspection.
St. Cloud is trying to get on a new platform for their permitting as well. They had a platform that was not working well, and we had a couple of meetings with them, and they said, okay, time out. We're not going to try to fix this. We're going to a whole new system. Now we're hearing that, yeah, they're ready to talk with us about how the new system works. So
What is that? There's a huge industry out there of, software for municipalities and, and they're always getting sold.
but if they're working smarter, you'd think there'd be cost efficiencies and permit costs should come down.
Oh, yeah, but a lot of times these systems
don't.
don't work very well.
Yeah.
The systems are over designed.
Was it a state audit or who was auditing? Do you remember? 'Cause
I
hadn't
was
heard
supposed to
about
come
this.
out of the state to audit at least select municipalities that they thought were targets that were really high on permits.
I'll check on it.
And
Yeah.
they thought these municipalities were making money.
Yeah. Well, and there's some
Certification fees are even worse than permit fees, though.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about, I mean, they exist for just, for city funding, and no matter how,
Oh, I'm sure we
what
did
they
that in my
call
days
it,
at St.
they're-
Cloud.
They're gonna have to get a certain amount of money every year regardless, so park dedication fees are rarely tied directly to a specific park.
It's like an extra tax on homeowners. I mean, if you want, I've always said you have the
It's a
tools.
development fee, they just call it a development.
Yeah, and if there's a consistent cost for parks in a community, then put it on the property tax. Be honest.
Or it should be in the 1% sales tax.
Or
Or
the-
or the 0.5%, no, it is 1%, and then when that
Although
started.
that's indirect too.
When
I
that
mean,
started 20
you know,
years ago, though, that was supposed to be directly tied, all these taxes are always initially supposed to be directly tied to something.
then it becomes a slush fund.
Yeah, over time, everybody loses their focus on it and, move on, and, the money just has to keep coming in.
And you know what's interesting? I talk quite often about.
I'm just gonna mention, anybody still online, if you want to hang on with us, we're gonna continue talking here, but I also want to be respectful of people's time, so I suppose we could adjourn and keep talking, but we can keep talking too. It's fine.
Just one more quick comment about that. I'm sorry, I get pretty passionate.
No,
about this.
go Greg.
You talk about having to reinvent the wheel with these park dedication fees. The state of Minnesota, I can only imagine, went through this many, many years ago with dedicated gas tax and vehicle license. You know, the legislature can't touch that money and dedicate it towards transportation. I can only imagine it was very similar at that point, and they said, okay, this is dedicated money. And it was the best thing they ever did.
And people have been
because-
trying to rate it ever since.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
absolutely true. I mean, absolutely true. You get pots of money that have fences around them. People are always trying to knock them down or put gates in. It's very true. Very true. I'll look into the audit. The park dedication fee, watch for that Supreme Court decision. That'll be a big deal. But I would agree. I think they need to tighten that up because it is used as a slush fund by a lot of communities and it adds significantly to the cost of these houses. We run into this all the time. We have public officials talking about the need for affordable housing. And we all get that. And at the same time, they're pushing hard for policies and new stuff that's going to add a lot of cost to housing. You just can't do both.
Is it affordable housing or workforce housing?
Affordable housing, workforce housing, subsidized housing.
I've been told directly by a city planner, don't use the word it's affordable housing when you're talking to the planning zone, call it workforce
Call it
housing.
workforce. And really, that's what we're talking about. Homes people,
ridiculous.
the average worker
We
can
gotta
afford to
change
live in.
the vernacular just to keep some politicians happy.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to the
Stuart moves to adjourn.
Second?
Second. You're the only other committee member, I think,
Yeah.
right?
Greg, second.
Greg seconds.
Second, sorry.
All righty.
We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. Always feel free to give me a call if you need anything, all right? Thanks.
Yeah, second from the scouts.